Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for the CSP webinar series. Today, we are going to be talking about how to protect yourself on Facebook. For those of you who know us, we've been doing these webinars for the past couple years, and they've been of great success, had a lot of fantastic feedback, and a lot of people have attended. We are taking a little bit of a tack today, though. Typically, we do more business technology, but there has been so many questions recently around more consumer privacy. I think everybody is familiar with Facebook and what has come out of the Cambridge Analytica fallout. And so we decided, again, not talk about anything that we're selling or we're seeing from Business Sense, but again, hopefully provide some information that will help you as a consumer as you understand what happened and also how to protect yourself in light of these recent revelations. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. We definitely do appreciate your time today. A couple quick logistics before I dive in. Again, first, as I said, thank you. We know everyone's time is extremely valuable, so we appreciate you spending a few minutes with that. And on that note, time is of the essence. So we have, while your invitation says an hour, we intentionally try to keep these to 30 minutes. So we'll try to keep it short. So because of that, we have muted everybody upon entry to try to keep things moving along. We do love to get questions, but we ask you to please chat those in. There's a chat window on the right. If you have any questions, please text them in and we will address those at the end. But again, just to prevent background noise or anything else, we have muted everyone upon entry. And finally, we do ask you to give us your feedback after we're done. Tell us what you think. Is this a good session? What would you like to see more info on? These are for you. And again, I mean, we've had a lot of people on these and gotten a lot of feedback on what are helpful format sessions and things like that. So please keep it coming and we'll make sure to adjust. Brief introductions before we do dive in. I was looking at the registration list last night and do know a lot of you, but there are a few new names as well. So very briefly, CSP, we are a 23-year-old IT services and solutions firm based here in Raleigh, North Carolina, focusing on managed services, IT technologies such as phone systems, servers, wireless, switching, voice, everything in between, as well as cloud. One of our biggest growth areas has been both our cloud services, infrastructure service, backup, and probably our largest growth of the past 12 months has been around security. We've been doing a ton with IT security, so we're happy to help you with any of those needs you may have. And finally, as for me, I'm Stephen Riddick. I'm our VP of Sales and Marketing here at CSP. I started in the industry at Cisco Systems for a while, moved over here about 5 years ago, have truly loved it and love helping out our clients. So my contact information is below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and I will be happy to follow up with you. I guess my last caveat before I dive in is thanks to my many research partners. I will be the first to raise my hand as I led off. We typically do more business technology here and not as much consumer grade. So there was a lot of research that went into this. So many thanks to everyone listed here who I did borrow some ideas from to build this presentation out. So as for the agenda today, first we're going to really talk about what happened and then spend the majority of our time though talking about how can you protect yourself. What has been happening over the past few months since the New York Times broke the story about Cambridge Analytica selling and leveraging potentially, allegedly, some data from Facebook for the 2016 United States presidential election. So we are going to start there since that seems to be the linchpin for all these conversations about data privacy, user privacy. So really quick, I do think it is important to understand what has happened. I know there's a lot of fact, a lot of fiction out there. So to the best of my knowledge, again, from looking at multiple sources, this appears to be what happened. In 2007, Facebook allowed the developers to build and offer application within its space. As if you use Facebook, you know there are all kinds of apps that tie into Facebook, and these have been and I'm sure will be an important part of Facebook's strategy, a good way to add additional value both for Facebook, for their users, and for these app developers. In the summer of 2014, Cambridge Analytica, a data analytics firm, hired a Russian-born American, Alexander Kogan, to gather some basic information on Facebook users. To do this, Kogan created an app. This was a very simple app just called This Is Your Digital Life. And honestly, all this was a series of innocent surveys about your likes and dislikes. And that is, all this app was. It was extremely simple, and it was just getting you to click on things that you like or you don't like. But built into those terms of service, it was stated that it will collect data on you and your friends. And this was was perfectly legal. It was within Facebook's rules. It was built into their terms of service that when you downloaded this app, that stated that they could collect that data on you and your friends. In 2015, Facebook learned of the use of this app and asked Cambridge Analytica to stop and delete all data. In 2016, Facebook changed its policies and no longer allow app developers to take information from friends of friends, or more or less from your friends. If you were to download an app, you can't use your info to then data mine your friends. That is no longer possible with Facebook's newest policy. And then what really kicked this off in 2016, Cambridge allegedly used data to assist the Trump campaign. And again, allegedly at this point, they're denying it, but there is also a lot of reason to believe that it was. I think the other caveat is there's a lot of other people who claim that this data wasn't used well anyways and probably had very minimal impact. But today's session is not to get into politics, but rather to show just the amount of data that is out there and to hopefully teach you some how to minimize your risk and minimize your exposure. So I think the real trick here, for lack of a better term, was that under Facebook's old policies, friends of friends were able to have their data harvested. So about 300,000 Facebook users downloaded this app and took this quiz. Again, it was a fairly basic app, but through some marketing, through some different prizes, they were able to convince 300,000 users to take this quiz. And again, it was just a very innocent series of surveys. Through that, their friends' data was viewed. So if you consider those 300,000 users, and then you start to extrapolate that out and think about all the friends that they have, truly is exponential growth. Initially, Facebook said there were over 50 million people exposed. It is now up to 87 million people whose data was harvested by Cambridge Analytica, as they then tried to build and target users for specific ads and potentially fake news. Everybody knows that, in their role in the election. And again, as I said, the key is who it really was, anyone. So even if you didn't take and download that quiz, if your settings allowed your friends to see your data, and when your friends took this quiz, your data could have been collected as well. So it really was, the scope, obviously just figure the population of the country, 87 million people is a very, very, very large segment of the population. Lastly, this was really eye-opening to me, and it's what could Cambridge see? And Facebook, for better or worse, they're an information company, but they store troves of data, and to them, that data is so critical. That's how they market to you. That's how they sell advertising rights. That's how they candidly make their money. So they do store a lot of data, and the interesting thing is you can see it. And so that's one place where I would like to start by taking a look at just the type of data that Facebook has. So I'm going to briefly just jump over to a demo, and this is my real-time, my live Facebook account. I'm off my homepage to let you know where I am. If you come up here to the top right, this question mark is a quick help. Just to the right, there's an inverted triangle. If you click on that and scroll down into your settings, that is exactly where I am here. And this is the main page in your settings, general account settings, who you are, your contact info. And then we're going to spend a lot of time in a minute looking at some of these items over here. But I'd like to start right here with this: download a copy of your Facebook data. And it does take a little bit of time to download, so I'm not going to do it right here. But if you click on this button and download, you can see all of the data that Facebook has collected on you. So I've already done that, so I'm going to take us right into that. And simply here, it is a zip folder. Again, this is in my downloads file. This is a zip folder of Facebook Stephen Riddick. So it says about you, ads, apps, calls and messages, comments, events, following followers, friends. Some of these, fortunately, and let me start by saying I'm not a huge Facebook user. I use it to connect with people, but candidly, I probably get on Facebook once every 3 months. Very rarely post, very rarely do much of anything on there. So I don't have a lot of data, but it's still interesting to see what is. So, for example, I've never downloaded any app that are Facebook apps, so no data there. But one, to be quite honest, friends. I mean, yeah, obviously I do have friends. So if I look at some of these HTML files, here is a list. And again, I trust everybody on here and I won't stop. But I mean, you can see exactly all the people that I've added as friends when I added them. So right away, they know who am I connected to. And this is data that third-party app developers do have access to. So again, when you talk about building that web, this is how they do it. If we go back, you can see other things, groups, location history. I mean, that's another one that I've never downloaded an app on my phone, so they don't have any location history, but that's one they could do. Payment history, photos, posts. Again, all of this data is saved. You can see for posts and comments, I've actually only commented one time. I had a friend who was trying to do a parade of home in Wilmington, and I liked a post that he made, and that's the only one. But I mean, they keep all of the posts, all the comments, and then even your search history. So it can see who are people that I've searched for, who have I seen there on Facebook. So just all kinds of data that Facebook is storing and has access on. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily bad. Again, I mean, when you sign up, obviously they're building that network and it's in the terms and conditions, but just to really show it's interesting to see. Okay, so going back to the presentation, and really where I'd like to spend the rest of our time is, I mean, how can you protect yourself? So we've looked at what happened with Cambridge. We talked about the data that Facebook has. So how do you protect yourself? And I really put this into three big buckets. And again, I scoured a lot of different sources, did a lot of research on this, and to me, I think there are three big buckets. One, we're going to talk a lot about becoming an expert, just understanding the risk and managing the privacy settings. So within Facebook, what can you do within Facebook to manage that risk? Number two, be vigilant in how you use it. So not necessarily anything that you can do within Facebook from a setting standpoint, but again, just be vigilant in how you use it. And then finally, I mean, there is an option to just leave it. If you're still uncomfortable, and not saying that is a suggestion. Again, I'm personally, I've thought about it, but realistically, it doesn't bother me to necessarily know who my friends are. And at this point, I don't see a need to, but again, that is every person has their right to do that. So to me, those are the three big buckets that we'll discuss. So one, managing the privacy settings, and really to handle this there's 6 big things I want to talk about: privacy, timeline and tagging, apps and websites, business integrations, ads, security, and login. And to talk about these, we are actually going to just dive straight back into our live demo. So from the start, the first place to really look at, and if you've never spent time in here, I would definitely urge you to do so, and really lock down as much or as little as you feel comfortable. So if you look at the toolbar here on the left-hand side, we started in the general, but again, I want to go straight into the privacy piece. So here are just basic settings that you can set. So your activity, who can see your future post, friends. The reason they say future is obviously anything in the past, if I was sharing with everyone, they would have already had access to see that. But say moving forward to today, who do I want to see this? Do I want to have this open to everyone? Do I want to have it open to public, friends of friends, or friends except, only me, so nobody can see it, or different options there? For me, I have it set just friends. You can review all the posts and things that you're tagged in. So you can use that activity log to see anything that you're tagged in, anything you've posted. You can delete things. You can also limit past posts, try to delete things and clean it up if you would like. Who can see your friend requests, friends of friends? Who can see your friends list? And for me, as you'll see, my theme is, you can keep all these things open to the public. In general, I have it locked down to just so my friends can really see a lot of my information. And, do you want search engines outside of Facebook to link to your profile? No. Who can find me from phone number? Only friends. Who can find me from email? Only friends. So really trying to limit how people can see me, find me, and who can see me. I've really tried to lock this down, personal preference on how you would like to do it. The next, if we come over to timeline and tagging, again, very, very similar theme, and we just urge you to spend some time really thinking about who you want to be able to see your data. Who can post on your timeline? I say friends can. If somebody wants to wish me happy birthday, that is just fine. That's honestly about the only time I feel like I get post anymore. Who can see what others have posted? I've set it to only me. Who can see posts you're tagged in on your timeline? Again, I put that only me, so if somebody tags me on something, it's not showing up around the world. When you're tagged in a post, who do you want to add to your audience to the post? And so these are just all different settings that you can play around with. And again, not that they're right or wrong, but just for your own personal review, I think it's at least important to understand what the options are and who can see what, and let you set that accordingly. Okay, there have been some big changes in these next few that we're going to look at. I'm now going to jump down to apps and websites. This is an area that Facebook has tweaked a lot, just honestly in the past few months since the Cambridge Analytica came out. And I would urge you to spend some time in this one here as well. And for me, I apologize. As I said, I don't have any apps, but I think the apps are really, if we go back to the initial example, that's where Cambridge Analytica got all their data. So I think apps are something to keep a very close eye on. So you can come in, you can see what are your active apps that you want to review. And then if you are in there and you do have some, you can get extremely granular with what can they see, what can they not see. So I would urge you to do that. And again, apps, preferences, apps, website, games, setting controls your ability to interact with the apps, websites, and games both on and off Facebook. So again, I have that turned off. You can also look at old versions of Facebook for mobile. I never even had that. So I don't have a lot of information here, but if you do have apps, this is a very valuable, very important place to look to familiarize yourself with and make sure that you're familiar with who can see what in regard to your apps. The next is very similar. These are business integrations. So business integrations are services that you've connected your Facebook account to manage one or more of your ads, pages, groups, events, things like that. So for example, TripAdvisor, so a business integration might be one that you have, where if you've tied TripAdvisor into Facebook, so you can log in and there's creating that that integration there. So very similar here. I think you can really be surprised about where these integrations have, and sometimes if you're signing in with Facebook, you don't even realize you've created that business integration. So I would ask you to pretty frequently come back and just make sure that that this all looks correct, that there's nothing fishy, but also just check on those settings and make sure that you're comfortable with who can see what. So I typically never log into any of these via Facebook, so I don't have any business integrations. But again, if you did, come here, look at this list. You can delete them, you can close them. It's where you manage all of those business integrations. The next one, as we come down this list, is for ads. And so when we look at ads, here are your ad preferences. And again, learn what influence the ads you see and take control over your ad experience. So you can come in, you can highlight your interests, you can look at advertisers you've interacted with. So they're storing, if you're clicking on a certain advertisement, a certain link, they're tracking that. And so you can see what data Facebook is collecting in regard to those advertisers, because they're going to store that and say, Stephen, we see that you were shopping a lot at Amazon Prime, so we're going to keep giving you Amazon type things. Or if there's a particular brand of clothing that I like, they'll see that I'm interacting with that, and then they'll build their algorithms. As everyone I'm sure is aware in 2018 that you always seem to have the ad pop up of something that you were just looking at or just surfing. So you can see who you've interacted with. No offense, but I'm not going to show my interest, my ads, or anything like that, but I think it's something you can definitely do. I just wanted to mainly point it out to everybody here so they could go in and see what those settings are. And then the ad settings, though. Here's one area I did want to be able to highlight: ads based on data from partners. So to show better ads, we use data that advertisers and other partners provide us about your activity of all Facebook company products. So again, going back to these integrations, Facebook has a lot of integration. There is a tight network, a tight web that they have woven. And so a lot of times you could see overlap between advertisers and different platforms. I've turned that off to not allow that. Ads based on your activity on Facebook, company products that you see elsewhere. Again, so I'm not allowing that. Ads that include your social actions. So again, we may include your social actions on ads, such as liking the page that's running ad and saying no one can see that. So I would tell everybody, look at the settings. And again, there's nothing to, if you want to say, heck, I want to see ads that I like, that's fine, not a problem at all, but mainly wanted to point out and show everyone what you could see here. So if we go back to our settings, the final thing is security and login. This isn't necessarily regarding privacy, but more just for security. I did want to spend one moment to just point this out. This obviously today is much more about our privacy, but just how you're securing it, your account as well. A great place to see, friends to contact if you get locked out, see where you're logged in from, change passwords. You can use things such as two-factor authentication. You can look at your logins, things like that. So I hope that was a helpful review of the settings within Facebook for privacy. Again, I would definitely urge everyone to spend a few minutes to just go up to that top right, just to the right of the question mark, the help, that inverted triangle, go down the settings, look at all those settings, see how you're set up, just make sure you're comfortable with that. Besides working specifically within Facebook to protect yourself, I think there's another bucket, as I mentioned a moment ago, and that is just be vigilant in your use. And these are just some simple things that I would like to touch on. But one, avoid personality quizzes. I mean, yes, they're fun time killers, but honestly, just remember, nothing is free. I mean, candidly, these are fun and quirky and enjoyable, but nothing's for free, and candidly, they're a way for marketers to gather information on you. If you're inputting data about yourself, you're giving it away, and that data is going somewhere, and that is the point of these different personality quizzes, these surveys, things like that. Second, just be careful with who your friends are. Again, Facebook is cleaning some of this up, but a lot of the Cambridge Analytica came from friends of friends, and just because, again, these data collectors look at the entire network, so who your friends are can affect who can see what of yours. I put avoid third-party apps, and maybe avoid is a hard phrase, but I would say just realize that through the terms of use, third-party apps, so even if you really trust Facebook, a lot of third-party apps, if you build an app on Facebook, you do gain access to their data as well. So maybe not avoid, but I do just want everyone to be cognizant of that fact and realize that, and then be very careful, I guess, when you are potentially leveraging these third-party applications. A quick and easy one is to log out of Facebook when not using it, just sort of going behind the scenes of internet browsing. A lot of times, if you're logged into Facebook on one tab or on one page and you're surfing elsewhere, again, there are integrations where Facebook can still see where you're going. So just when it comes to advertising, things like that, I think it's always prudent to log out when you're not using it. Another thing that you can do is leverage something called incognito mode on your browser. So some of the newer browsers have this. I use Chrome. So for example, on Chrome, I can hit Shift Control N. N as in Nancy, and that puts me in incognito mode. And when you're in incognito mode, it automatically deletes history, deletes cache, deletes cookies. It is on the local machine. So Facebook, for example, if you're talking about Facebook, they can still see things, but it is just another way to at least locally limit that footprint that you're making on the web a little bit more. And finally, going back to the app conversation, Facebook owned apps on your smartphone. I do think those are things that are tied in a lot of times in those terms of use. There are location tracking. There are things that are being sent back and forth between Facebook. So again, I said delete here, but I guess more than anything else, that's probably not a delete, but just be cognizant of. And finally, again, I think the safest option, I'm raising my hand. I haven't decided to do this yet, but there's always the option to just leave Facebook. I think if you look at the numbers, there hasn't been sort of some mass exodus. To me, a lot of the data is relatively, I guess, maybe I'm too trusting, but innocent. And to me, I just don't feel like I have enough of a footprint that concerns me too much. But if you did sit through this and you're like, man, Facebook has more information than I would ever want them to have on me, nothing says you can't just delete it. So that is probably the safest option out there when it comes to protecting your privacy. All right, well, perfect. Well, we will wrap there. And again, thank you and have a great day, everybody.